Hello. This was my panel for TouhouFest 2025 on writing my book, Violet Origins, the Sumireko Chronicle. I didn't have a big audio setup for this, so the audio quality is a bit bad. Sorry about that. This was recorded from an angle, so I'll edit my slides for the panel to the right. And of course, my book is out now. If you want to buy a copy of the book either physically or digitally, you can use the links in the description below. Okay, enjoy the panel.
This is my panel on writing a Touhou book. This is my third year at TouhouFest. This is my fourth time doing a panel. I feel like everyone already knows who I am by now, so just gonna do this real fast. Yeah, I've been writing about Touhou for 5 years, so that's how it's relevant to writing a book. I studied game design in college. I graduated in 2024. Right now I teach chess to elementary schoolers, but writing has always been a sort of passion of mine that I do on the side. So, the world of Touhou books, of course, starts in Japan, like Touhou does. So, Touhou books were pretty common in Japan because that's where it originated. And got a lot of interesting formats, so a lot of people just publish like straight novels. But yeah, more things, so like the Touhou music CDs, right? Those integrate music and storytelling together. So a lot of people, in an effort to integrate with Touhou, decided to do that themselves. So you get things like Genmu. So Genmu is like a landmark work because it's a really beautiful song, but it also comes with a novel. So in the West, I would say we really had many. Like the best you'll find is maybe a fanfic on AO3, but thanks to this event actually, you've been seeing more and more. So one of the things that made me realize this could work was at TouhouFest, I started seeing like books, because I was thinking about it before, but then actually going here and seeing a book published, that's what gave me more confidence. So my book is called Violet Origins. So what is this book? So Violet Origins, it's a novella about Sumireko and like characters besides her. So it's sort of an anthology, but the anthology is a set of arcs. So it's like the first 4 chapters linked together, but then you get next 4, which are like slice of life. But then you get another arc, but then you get like another arc after that. So even though it jumps between, there's a bit of connective tissue. It retells and expands on different events. So there's one section of the book that's a retelling of Violet Detector from different perspectives, for example. But it also features completely new stories. I felt like for like a first book, having like some Touhou canon to ground it would help to ease new readers in. And my book also has a complete new subcast of characters, which is Sumireko's family, who I'll talk about later. So, yeah, talked about this a bit. TouhouFest 2023, this was announced like a year and a half in advance. So I was trying to think of cool things I could bring to TouhouFest. And I came up with this Sumireko plot beat that was like, so good, I needed to write this book. And I was like, I'll get it done in a year. It's going to happen. Why it took 3 years. So I could have finished it in a year, I locked in, but this is something I just kept chipping away over and over again. The original concept of this book was not cohesive enough. But when writing, so I started with Sumireko because Sumireko is one of my favorite Touhou characters. When you think about it, there's a lot of stuff to her in canon. She's in a lot of print works. She has a unique concept because she's from the outside world. At the same time, we barely know anything about her relative to the amount of potential she has. Like, she's related to Renko. We don't really know anything about that, right? There's so much to tell about Sumireko, but she still has a lot about her. So it's really easy for the book to work because I have good backing, but there's still a lot of untapped potential. And the plot beat I thought of could really only work for her. So my original idea for the story was just an anthology. I had no connection between the chapters whatsoever. I had a list of concepts, so I had like Moko meeting Sumireko, Namizo hanging out with Sumireko on her birthday, and I came up with ideas for Sumireko's future. So when planning, I just jotted down notes of what to do, and then I started writing drafts of chapters. So my original first chapter was a retelling of Touhou 14.5 from Moko's perspective. If you know Sumireko, Moko is a important to her in a lot of fan works because she's her first friend. The problem was, this chapter was very boring. So, dialogue was like very cliche. So it's like, Sumireko was like, oh, you're immortal? Cool. And then Mocha was like, that's not how this is supposed to go. So riveting. And it strayed way too close to canon. It's like, why would you read this if you can just play the game? But I just kept going and going. So, Kasen, this was one I had a better vision of. So, with Kasen, I just had her and Sumireko exploring in Tokyo together and just talking about life. This was a completely original story, so it was more engaging. And this actually stayed pretty intact with the final book, but the stuff I added into it is what helped frame the book. And then Doremi. So I don't like the story of Violet Detective that much. Does anyone know how many Sumirekos there are?
Yes.
There's 3. So, Touhou 14.5, there's a regular one. Touhou 14.5, again, there is a dream self. But then, in 15.5, Zoom wanted to bring back the dream world. Uh-oh, he said in 2006, the dream world has alternative selves. So he had to make a third Sumireko, and then he made an entire game just to answer a plot beat, and now nothing makes sense. So, that's a story I always wanted to tackle, because I thought reinterpreting that would be cool, so that's what I did. So, I don't think the chapter I wrote was great. Still had a lot of the same trappings as my Moko chapter, but it was still like better than my first chapter. So as you keep writing, you get a grip of things and you get better and better. So I had these 3 core chapters for a while, and I kept writing bits and pieces for 2 years. So there's like pros and cons to an anthology setup, right? So with an anthology, you don't have to keep track of like a cohesive plot. So you can just write whatever you want. So this means like if you put down a project for 3 months, you can just go back in without much research and you're able to go in like pretty fast. But on the flip side, like without a direction, there wasn't really a focus. So like I couldn't think of where to go next. Like I didn't really have a vision. So I found a vision for originality. So I'm a game designer. So Shigeru Miyamoto made Mario, cool. But one piece of advice I always listen to him about was, he says to make your first chapter, or your first level last. Because that's what they did for Mario, because it's like, after you make all of your levels, you'll have like learned a lot. But you want the player's first impression of your game to be the best it can be. So that's why you make your first level last. So after writing these chapters, I realized if my first chapter is bad right now, I just need a better opening. And now that I've learned more from writing everything else, I can write something that's able to grab the audience's attention. So this is how I came up with the idea of Sumireko's family. And then in Touhou, when we go to Retrospective 53, we see that Renko is super excited to introduce Mary to her family. It seems like her family is super supportive. So that was kind of the jumping off point for how I wrote Sumireko's family. So, big character I wrote was her younger brother. So you might be wondering why not a sister, because Touhou is all female, but so I have a younger sister, but it's like, so I know how the brother-sister dynamic works. So that's something I feel comfortable writing about, whereas if I were writing 2 sisters, it would probably feel weird. At the same time, I didn't want to accidentally self-insert myself into the book. So I changed the ages. I'm older than my sister, but now Sumireko is older than her brother. And then this allowed for the book to explore different angles, because if people are in Gensokyo, they only know about a certain amount of things, right? But her brother probably knows more about her than anyone else. And then the scene I was the most proud of was this toy room scene I wrote, which is her brother's little, but then Sumireko's using her powers to she makes cars fly all around like a toy block city. She makes robots fly when they're play fighting against their dad. And that was the moment I realized I had something here, because that's very whimsical, that feels very in line with Touhou, and it's also just a lot of fun to read. Yeah, so I talked about this. So her family, they spent Sumireko spends half her life in the outside world, so her family was really good for that. You're able to track the personal side of her growth more, because with her brother, Sumireko tends to jump around Gensokyo to a different place every day. but she's always going to go home, so you have a more linear progress. And because I was making something new, it was more fun to write for. Does anyone figure out how to make Touhou OCs? Yeah, so it's like, it seems daunting at first, but you just make one and then you kind of get sucked into it, right? Like, you really start to get the appeal super fast. But I had a few concerns. So I had one new character per chapter, so time was jumping fast, because I always had to switch to a new character. Then the first chapter was by far the longest, and I'm thinking, people want to read a Touhou book for Touhou, right? So is it really good to have all this original stuff? And despite me asking people, it's actually very hard to get people to like read a thing. It's kind of surprising. So, yes. So, I paid a friend to read it. He's like a very good writer, and he also criticizes a lot. So, I do these things called game dance, which are competitions where we like compete against games. And he always leaves like these super in-depth comments. So I paid him. So yeah, my main concern was, I wonder if like presenting something this original is going to alienate the audience. Instead, he said the problem was there wasn't enough original content, because that was the best part of the book. And that just like completely blew my mind. But that's why it's so important to get feedback. Because as a writer, you might be thinking one thing, and it might be the complete opposite. He also thought the events of the first chapter went way too fast, because I was covering so much ground. So I was trying to think of, after, what should I do to like pace this better? And then I had my eureka moments. I can split my book into 3 parts, because I don't need to cover like so much time if I can just like focus in on like the little things at first. And I don't have to be super strict with my 1 chapter rule. Like, who really cares if some characters get more chapters? And I figured out there's some characters who are like more important to Sumireko's life than others. So like, Moko is her best friend, Reo is her brother. So they can get more chapters, and that lets me like spend more time in one place. So in book 1, they have multiple chapters. So then, yeah, I had an idea of like, Sumireko is going to do this, and then she's going to do that. And I realized also, this solved my issue with the connective tissue. Because if I have each book build to a future point, that's my thematic resonance. So that was my idea there. So I had to spend a lot of time to adjust to this structure. So some chapters were split into multiple. So I mentioned how my first chapter used to be super long. So I think that's now chapter 1 and 3. And then I even had some chapters I wrote that I moved to a potential second book if I ever make that. Then with multiple parts, some chapters are a bit more connected. So that's that flow I was talking about. So now I had a new direction, I had a theme, and I was a lot more motivated. And I also had the best problem ever, which is I wanted to take a break because I hadn't like done anything fun for like a month, but I just kept thinking, I want to keep writing, I want to keep writing, I want to keep writing. Like, I never wanted to stop writing. And I think that is the best problem anyone can have, because I just wanted to keep working. I didn't want to do anything else. It's like the opposite problem. And it probably also really annoyed people when I told them about it, that I was having such a hard life because I wanted to keep writing.
The 2 stages of ADHD.
So, there are a lot of, fun things. So, chapter 1, even though that's the first chapter, that's probably the one I spent the most time writing, because that's what Miyamoto said. And then here's another thing I learned. If you read your book in reverse, that actually helps a lot, because when you're reading a book, it's like you have the plot points, right? So then you go into the next chapter with all this context. But when I started reading my last chapter first, and then I kept going that way, I didn't have any context. So that made it seem like, oh, if I don't have the context for this sentence like has pretty weak diction. I don't have like the emotional resonance to like shield like any writing imperfection. So by writing in or editing in reverse, I was able to do things better. And this is a funny thing. So I come from games, but I actually had to shed a lot of what I called visual novelisms. So in a visual novel, you almost always have like characters talking to each other, right? It's almost exclusively dialogue. So every time in my book, I had a marker for this character said this character said that, like after every sentence. And when someone read it, they're like, your dialogue's really good, but it's like, you can also understand what each character is saying. You don't need to say like said after every sentence. And that's something where, because I spent so much time writing visual novels, I didn't really think about that. So that's another thing. If you come from like a certain division of writing, it does good to like look around to see what you're missing. And okay, so a lot of people have written, how many people have like edited and proofread? How many people hate it? I hate proofreading so much, because it's like, you spend all this time like writing all this cool stuff, and then like for probably twice as much, you're like, oh, I forgot a semicolon here. And it's just that over and over again, and you have to read your stuff like 6 times. It's really, really painful, but yeah, I got through it. So, I got a draft ready months before the actual event, because from games I have another thing of knowing you don't really want to announce something before it's done, because then if it doesn't get done, people are really disappointed. And I have a thing with my self-esteem, which I feel like is actually pretty good, is I only need one person to like the thing I wrote, and I feel like if one person likes it, then I'm happy, because I've made one person's life happier. But then there's also other stuff, like how do you print a book, right? Like, does anyone know that off the top of their head? That's what I thought, right? And it's like, how do you do that? How do I get cover art? How do I like distribute this? How do I sell online? Like, what do I do? So, a few of the things are fairly easy. So, I'm in a Dojin circle. So, I have a friend who's in a Dojin circle who's a really good artist. So I commissioned her. The bonus of that was she essentially designed my original character for me by putting him on the page. And then I was concerned about having a male on the cover because it's a Touhou work. And then she's like, you're stupid, that doesn't matter. And she was right. You know how many times someone's brought that up? Once. It was one guy, and that was it. Then, yeah, another friend helped me with, oh, that got cut off. Okay. Another friend helped me with like the cover layout, so I had like the author name and then the full title up. Then ebook. So that's actually fairly easy. You can export to a PDF or convert to an EPUB, that's fine. But how do I make a physical? So from TouhouFest 2024, I bought that printed book I showed earlier. So then on the book, thankfully, there's actually contact info from the author. So I just sent him an email and asked him how to do things, and he was super nice. He was the one who actually told me about that visual novel thing, and then he also directed me to Barnes & Noble Press. So if you're looking to like print a Touhou fan book in the future, this is what I used. So Barnes & Noble, reputable brand, right? It's also a mostly online portal. Because if you notice, a lot of these printing sites, you have to like contact someone directly, and I feel like that process is probably harder for us, because trying to explain what Touhou is and that we have permission to use it, that's going to take a bit of time. But because Barnes & Noble is all automated, that's fine. And then in their guidelines, they have this thing called personal works. So you can print a book without publishing, but also in their terms and conditions, there's nothing that says you can't sell personal works. So that's perfect for Touhou, and it fits the guidelines. And the nicest thing is actually, if you're thinking about physically printing, Barnes & Noble Press gives you this 30-page guide of exactly how to format everything. They tell you the margins, they tell you the font, they tell you like what widows and orphans are, they tell you like all the proper techniques to use, what format. It's really nice. And I've heard some vendors here have had issues, but also, whenever I print through them, I think it's probably like 5 days to make the order and then a week to print, and they've always like been a week ahead of schedule. So they always say, oh, it may take 2 weeks to print, but it's always been 1 for me. Oh yeah. So then, when I mentioned Genmu, I talked about how part of it was a book, but part of it was also an album. So this is something I couldn't get out of my mind, because I love music, and I'm like, what if this book had an album? So the other member of my circle is a guy named Wookie Walk. He's worked on a lot of stuff. He's worked on a Friday Night Funkin' mod for Touhou, that one's pretty big. He's made his own original album, and he's a lead developer on the Rhythm Heaven fan game Heaven Studio, which I think is like the biggest Rhythm Heaven fan game ever. He's won Best Audio in a lot of Touhou game jams, and he also works extremely fast. So I asked him about this album in December, I think it was January, and he's like, I don't know if I can get this in time, man, and then he was done by March. This is an 11-song album. yeah, but just like, that's not that loud. But yeah, so this first song was just kind of a vibe, so it's the same thing as like the Touhou music CDs, where I wanted like some original songs, but then a lot of remixes, so it kind of sucks you in. And then they also sort of fit the vibes of the book. Okay, so I also wanted to do some experimenting, because I come from my game developer background. So in games, one of the things I like about games and movies is you're able to like integrate like music and visuals into your storytelling. You can't really do that with games. So my book has 3 sections. Yeah, my book has a few sections that require like songs. So in the story, the characters are listening to the song, and I ask the reader to listen to them too. But you don't need the album for this, so you just find these for free on YouTube. So that's why there's a QR code on the back of my book, because I thought that's how you're able to get to the music. But that also creates a lot of problems, like, because I was like printing out the book, I need to make sure like the song titles were the same, right? I need to make sure the songs could get done. So that took a lot of coordination. And then another thing, which is, I'm actually curious how people would react to this, is there's a lot of points in the book where I gloss over canon events. So like, I feel like if you're buying a Sumireko book, you're pretty familiar with like what urban legend and limbo is. So there's a part that jumps pretty far into the climax, because I don't want to rewrite something that someone already knows. Instead, I want to like put a spin on things. So instead of like reading about a fight Sumireko had with someone that a player's likely already played, I write about how other characters like thought about it. So it was like trying to think of that. And then it feels like parts of the book like jump back and forth. So then the other thing was, I feel like just the general concept of a loose anthology in general is kind of different, because there is like a core theme at the end, but it still does feel like fairly loosely connected. Like you'll go from urban legend and limbo to just for hanging out with Renosuke one day, and then you're in Violet Detector, then you're at a concert. So it keeps jumping around, and even though there's loose connections, it's almost like a TV show, I'd say. So the rollout of the book was interesting. So I'm lucky to have an audience, so I have a bit of an advantage. So like I said, I only wanted to advertise the book when it was done, so that's what I did. Then YouTube also meant, yeah, so I posted on YouTube, and then that got a lot of views. Then I'm also in like 50 Touhou Discord, so I just posted there. Yeah, I was blown away by the response. So many people like wanted to see the book and were happy it was being made, and I thought that was really cool. The craziest one to me was online shipping, because when you think of like shipping Touhou works, there's a lot of problems with that, because I don't think you can just put it on Amazon, because that would violate the Touhou guidelines. You need like, it specifies, you need like a small shop or a small market. Then, does anyone know Gensokyo Radio? So Gensokyo Radio is a radio station that plays Touhou works, but they also run a store specifically for Dojin works and Touhou works. So that was perfect for me. I emailed them, and they said they would be happy to. So yeah, people who didn't go to this event can order the book online. And we're also hoping that this is going to lead to more Touhou like fan works coming their way in the future. So yeah. So I'm not going to lie. So it's like, obviously writing the book is the hard part, but the final stretch sure felt like the hard part, because I probably read through my book 20 times, and each time I would find like a new typo, for cover formatting, my first printing, my name was cut off. Second printing, my name was almost cut off, and there was like an error in the bottom right, and I left like a period or something, so I kept having to redo things over and over again. Something you don't think about, because I'm like, I'm gonna order 165 books. Where the hell am I gonna put everything? Like, where are you gonna put 165 books? So that was something I needed to figure out. How am I supposed to display these things? It's just, when you're doing this, there's a lot of things you don't think about. But in the end, it's like, seeing these books happen, like, that feeling of being able to create something so big, and like all this work coming together, that feeling is just unmatched, and it's worth any pain that you encounter. So, if you want to write a Touhou book, do it. It's worth everything you feel. It's incredible. And yeah, that's my panel. Thank you.